Hi, everyone. I'm Allegra from Beyond Your Wildest Dreams, and my partner, Natasha, is not with us today. She's off traveling. Good for her. Can't wait to hear about everything that she does while she is away. And today's topic is about summer plans, part two. As a mom, a lot of planning takes place for summer earlier in the year, like March when you're thinking about camps, April. Even now, it's still possible to get into camps, but there's other things that also have to happen for the summer, and I'm gonna talk about that in a little bit. But just to back up a little bit for those of you who maybe are joining us for the first time or watching this recorded, Natasha and I together have a business called Beyond Your Wildest Dreams. We also have our own businesses, and we've been friends for about a decade. And we just decided to start Beyond Your Wildest Dreams because at some point about 6 years ago, we just felt like it was really hard to be a working mom and to try and be a super engaged parent or, just to, be there the way that we wanted to be there and also show up as, a partner, a daughter, a friend in the way that we wanted to be able to do. And we just felt like there's just not a lot of support in our culture for moms to do this work. We kind of have to figure it out on our own and create our own support system. And, you might be wondering, well, isn't that just how it's always been? And I'm here to say, no, it hasn't always been that way. And in fact, I would say that there are countries today who support working parents and the family structure much better than the United States, and I love the United States, but I do feel like this is something we could do better, and we've done better before. So just to tell you a little bit about historically, during World War II, when all the guys were off fighting, you might remember there was this request for women to go into the factories, and this is when the Rosie the Riveter, like the "We can do it," the woman with the kerchief on her head, uh, was popularized because the United States government needed women to go into factories and fill all those vacant positions. However, most women at that time were stay-at-home moms, and the government stepped up in a wonderful way. During World War II, the US funded universal childcare. Federally subsidized childcare centers took care of an estimated 550 to 600,000 children while their moms were working in the factories. And not only were they taking care of the children, they were also fed there. And then when the moms would come pick them up after a day of work, they were given dinner that they could go home and then have dinner as a family. And it worked so well that actually there were petitions afterwards to continue the childcare programs. However, they were closed in 1946. And the thing is Natasha and I feel like, well, I shouldn't speak for Natasha. I just feel like that if I mean, we always joke there are no handbooks for being a parent. And the thing is, though, it's something that humans have been doing for a long time now, as long as humans have been around. There are some things that we know human children need. Like, human children need to be held. There's so many studies that have shown that when human children aren't held, you know, it leads to issues further down the line. They need to be held. They need to There's a saying, children spell love Time with people that they feel safe with. And, I just finished Matthew Perry's autobiography, which it's interesting that I even chose to read it because I'm not a big watcher of Friends. You know, I don't think I've ever seen a Matthew Perry movie. He wasn't someone that I followed his career, but I'm very interested in the stories of people who, as adults, struggle with challenges that they faced as children and understanding that process. Another movie and set of books that are similar to Matthew Perry's autobiography are written, by Nick Sheff and his father, and the combined autobiographies that they wrote were made into a movie called Beautiful Boy. I feel like Beautiful Boy was the name of his father's memoir, but his Nick Sheff's memoir, the son, had a different name. And oh, yes, it's called Tweak, Growing Up on Methamphetamines. So, reading Nick Sheff and Matthew Perry's autobiographies, it was kind of like reading the same story, and really so much of the reasons why they turned to substances had to do with challenges that they had when they were much very young, too young to articulate what they needed to do, and so they pushed it down, and I feel like, if we want our children to be functional adults, if we want our society to create citizens who can be successful in the world, then we need to set up our babies and our children for success. And on the one hand, I absolutely believe we should have federally funded childcare. We should have paid m- maternal and paid parental leave, paid parental leave, like other countries do. Last time I checked, we were one of only two industrialized countries that don't have federally paid parental leave. So we need that. We need support in caregiving. I feel like we should have classes in parenting that we can take. They should just be free classes that talk about the physical demands, the emotional demands, you know, communication. We weren't taught communication in school, and really it's something that I feel like should be taught. More of these kind of, what are called soft skills. Like if you followed us, then you know that I've homeschooled my child her whole life, and she's almost high school age. And there are a lot of things that I've been able to work on with her because I'm her teacher. Things like communication skills and like things like personal finance. I mean, do we real did was algebra 2 have I used algebra 2 as an adult? I don't think I have. But could I have used a personal finance class where we set up a budget and we live that budget? Absolutely. And by the way, I wanna point out this wonderful organization called Moms First. If you don't follow them online, definitely check them out. It's a great place, and they are really working to lobby for some of these rights that will support families and parents in the United States, and we can do better. We can do better. So, that's the goal. So, yes, that's who Natasha and I are, and we're all about, helping moms create the structures that they need in their lives, while also working to support and lobby for systemic changes in our society, absolutely. But also, in the meantime, that change, unfortunately, can take a little while, and so, on the other side, we wanna help moms with tools that they can use now. So we've written 4 small workbooks. They're very short because, hey, we just wanna get to the good stuff, give you the tools, and they're all workbooks because Natasha and I have been educators for a long time, and we know that and the brain science shows that when you implement what you learn right away, you're much more likely to absorb and use that information later. And so we've created these workbooks to help moms and caregivers create systems now to help you be successful in your chosen vocation and avocations. We want moms to have a life beyond their wildest dreams. We want them to be able to show up as the parent they wanna be, but also to have time to take care of themselves, because we know that if you're constantly giving and giving and giving and never taking care of yourself, eventually you end up sick, resentful, short-tempered. We've been there. We have been there. And what we have found is that there are ways to take steps today to give yourself more mental space, to help you set up boundaries about what's really important, so you're not always spinning your wheels doing things that are urgent but not important, right? Like, how often does someone come to you either in your work environment or in your family environment and they say, "Hey, I need this thing," and then you drop everything you're doing to work on that thing, but that thing wasn't actually that important. It was urgent, but it wasn't important. The challenge is things that are important but don't have, like, a reminder. Like, we always say, "Look, you don't really need to you don't have to write down a reminder to walk the dog per se, because the dog is gonna say to you, like, 'Hey, I need to go outside.'" Like, they're gonna bug you. They're gonna let you know. But things that maybe you wanna work on, such as, your health or some sort of creative outlet that you have, or maybe you want to up your skills so that you can apply for a new job, or maybe you wanna start interviewing. Those sorts of things don't have these external indicators reminding you like, "Hey, I need to go outside for a walk or to go pee," or whatever. These internal things, these types of goals, like health and professional and, whatever, you have to make time for them, because by the time you do have any sort of external reminder, like, for instance, health, right? There's a point where you're gonna get external reminders either in those blood tests that come back from the doctor, or your blood pressure, or not fitting your clothes, whatever, but those things take time. And so it takes a long time for you to notice the effects. And yet those are things that you kind of just have to chip away at a little bit, maybe not every day, but maybe every other day. And so you need to find ways to insert those things into your life so that you can take care of yourself, so you aren't feeling burnt out and resentful and short-tempered. I can tell you, I people say I'm a very, upbeat person. I can tell you that if I am not exercising regularly, I am not this upbeat, but I don't notice it right away. But, like, for instance, I am actually on the upswing of recovering from my father's passing. It's been 3.5 years now, and I pretty much just stopped working out when he died. Just stopped. And I didn't notice anything. I guess it was hard to notice because I was in mourning, but I would say it took about 8 months for me to start exercising again, and I had to start slow because I just was. And maybe now let me finish this story. So, about 8 months after my father passed, I started hiking again regularly, and if you follow my personal Instagram, then you see, actually, it's also on the BYWG's Instagram, where I go on a weekly hike with some friends, and I've been doing it now for about 3 years, and it's it was such a great way to get back into it because I had friends to help, motivate me to get there, but the reason why I started the hiking was because about 5 months after my father passed, I started to feel the effects of not exercising. I said, "Ooh, my point of view is starting to get dark." I recognize this, and I've had 2 periods of kind of tiptoeing up to the edge, or maybe not even stepping over the edge a little bit, of depression, one in my 20s and one in my 30s. Yeah, my father passed, I was in my 40s, and so I recognized what it was. In my 20s, it was bad, it took me a while. I had to have a doctor tell me that I was feeling that way, and in my 30s, I recognized it, I moved back from the edge, and I was in a really good place up until I had been very regular about exercise and everything up until my dad passed, and then when he passed, it just completely knocked me for a loop, and as I said, for 5 months, I did nothing, and that's when I started to feel this little, like, "You're feeling blue. Everything seems a lot bigger than it is. You need to exercise." And so that's when I sought out a way to start exercising easily, and I've just been kind of building from there, from the people that I hike with. We started playing tennis together, and then I also started playing some soccer, and then in the last 3 months, I've actually well, no, I guess about 6 months ago, I started doing, like, more exercise, like weightlifting, and then about 3 months ago, I started using ClassPass, which I'm a really big fan of, to just to mix it up because I get intellectually bored with exercise, and so to take some classes, so that's been really great. But it took me a while to get back to this point, and so what I have learned from this experience is I'm not gonna stop working out when there's a death in the family because it can take a long time to recover from that, and especially the older you get, like, it's harder to get things going again. It's harder to get back into the physical shape that you wanna be. It just takes longer, and I've been my life has been so busy, I've been homeschooling a junior high, middle grade student, and so that was taking up more time, so it's kind of like, I'm getting older, my daughter's needs were becoming more, so I was less able to have time for myself. So, what I've learned from this situation is that I'm gonna make sure that, next time something major like this knocks me for a loop, I'm not going to stop exercising. And the great thing too about having, like, these systems in place in terms of a weekly hike with friends is that I don't wanna let them down, and I love seeing them. It's not just exercise, it's getting to spend time with my friends. So, I'm motivated to not stop doing this. So that's exciting. So, on to the topic today, which is summer plans part 2. So, earlier in the year, we had chit-chatted about camps and plans for the summer. But now it is May 23rd. Summer is technically in a month in terms of the seasons, but schools are starting to let out in the next 3 weeks. And what I am doing around the house is preparing the house for summer because we have an outside area that gets doesn't get as much use during the winter because it's cold out there. And so we've also had a lot of rain where I live this year. And so we have lots of volunteer plants that are in places that I do not want plants because they're growing up in around sitting areas and stuff that make it unusable. So I actually have been weeding for months now because what I found was that the early rains, like the January rains, the volunteer plants I don't like the word weeds. In fact, I love this one saying that a weed is just a plant whose purpose you don't know yet. Because like, dandelions are one of the best plants ever when it comes to you can eat it from root to stem, and it's very, very healthy for you. So, anyway, I don't like to call them that. So, these volunteer plants, though, I found that the roots were really, easy to pull out around March because of all the rain that we were having still. And so I have been weeding pretty much this whole year just to get rid of, but then new ones are coming up because again, it's just been raining a lot. And so we actually have an event happening at our house in 3 weeks. And because we know what has to happen, our family, we know what has to happen in order to get our yard into the position where we wanna have people over, where they can have someplace to sit and they're not gonna get their legs scratched by these giant weeds. Because some of these weeds are hardcore. They're like they'll s the they'll cut you. They're coming for you. So, we want it to be pleasant back there. We don't want people getting scratched, and also, we try to keep the some of the foxtails to a minimum because those can get into our doggy's ear. So we've been weeding now. I've been like I said, I have personally been weeding kind of like whenever it rained, I would go outside and pull some weeds. But now we're at the point where it's just kind of like the stuff that we have to finish cleaning up and then we have to sweep because there's lots of leaves. We have to wipe all of the chairs down because they have a layer of dust. We have to wipe, the lights and the fans off because they all have a layer of dust. So when I say summer plans version part 2, this is what I'm talking about getting things ready so that you can enjoy your space for the summer. And maybe you don't have an outdoor space, maybe you live in an apartment, maybe you have a patio or a balcony that you also need to, you know, dust or I'm not great at keeping up with plants in terms of pulling off the dead leaves. So this is a great time to pull off the dead leaves, to maybe repot some plants that have outgrown or need new soil. When the soil goes down in a potted plant, it's because the nutrients are being used by the plant to grow. So you might have to lift it up, even if the pot is a fine size, you might have to lift it up and put new soil in because it needs those nutrients so that it can keep growing and thriving. You might want to, change out your pillows. That can be a fun thing to do as the seasons change. So, take a look around your space, see what you can do in order to help make it prepared for summer. Maybe you want to plan to have some people over. Natasha and I are big fans of having people over in order to force us to take our house keeping to the level that we might not take it to normally. Like my grandmother was the most amazing housekeeper and she worked too, but she was always on top of it. But she also enjoyed it. I would rather spend my time, you know, hiking or singing in a choir or doing my stand up or something like that. So, I'm not the best housekeeper, but what I love is that the change of seasons it gives me a reminder like, "Oh, it's time to spend some time in that space that you've been neglecting because it's been too cold out there." So, take this time to look around and do that. Also, I do it's still plenty early to spend some time planning things for later in the summer, like maybe a camping trip that you want to do or something. And this is a great place if you go to our website, bywdreams.com. I'll just put it up here. We have a we have in our on our blog, let me find the other link. It's We have 10 tips and packing lists to help make camping easier. So, Natasha and I are huge fans of camping. I've camped I'm actually gonna add another let's use this one. Go right at that tinyurl.com/bywd camping. So, Natasha and I have been camper I started camping about 30 years ago. I did not camp as a kid. So it's been something that I've learned as an adult. I actually almost like died uh from uh from not packing properly and camping and almost freezing or hypothermia. So, I have learned from my mistakes, let me tell you, and we were tent campers for decades and decades and decades, and then, about 4 years ago, our family decided to get a camper van because we wanted to do even more and be more spontaneous with our camping. So, we have 10 tips for camping, for people who are new to camping, and our packing list, mine and Natasha's packing list, and my packing list is the packing list that I used to use when we would do tent camping. So it's not for people who have camper vans, that's not we use the same things, but a lot of them just live in our camper van now. So, yeah, so check that out. So it's a great time to get a campsite and, for those if you've never camped before, you might be thinking about, like, putting on a backpack and carrying all your water and, like, trekking in somewhere. No, 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 no. Natasha and I do what's people call car camping, which is where you literally just drive your car up, you park, and there's some land with a tree that you can put your tent under. And there's a barbecue pit. Sometimes some of these sites even have stores. So you can buy firewood there, which actually you shouldn't travel with firewood long distances anyway, because this is how invasive insects get transported from place to place. So it's a good idea to buy local firewood wherever you go anyway, but you can get water, you can even get coffee at some of these places, like brewed coffee. So, we're talking a very low level of camping, like, just dip your toe in. I'm not sure that I'm ever gonna be a pack-in sort of camper, like, I just don't think that's me. I admire people who do that so much, but this is a very low level of camping, it's very easy. Now, there are lots of great websites, Reserve America is one of them where you can go and you can book national sites. Now, the more popular sites usually how these websites work is they open up 6 months before the date that you wanna camp, and the really popular sites, you have to be on that website 6 months before if you wanna get something. However, there are sites that are less popular that always have openings and sometimes even last minute openings. Like if you check the week before or a couple days before you want to go, you might get lucky and someone who booked 6 months ago can no longer go. So they've canceled it. So take the time now. If you've always wanted to try camping, it's so great. There's so many health benefits to camping. It's a great way to reset your circadian rhythm. It, uh, I have all of these things listed in the if you go to tinyurl.com/bywd camping, you'll see there, it improves mood, it improves sleep. In fact, studies have shown that children who spend more time outside actually have better eyesight too. So, go there, check it out. Camping is so fantastic, and yeah, get a site. If you can't get one through Reserve America, there's also recreation.gov is another website because some of the it depends on if it's like a national park versus like a state park. There's also Reserve California within California, so whatever state you're in, you probably also have those kind of websites. Also, if you have your heart set on camping and you can't find one at any of these public locations, there are private campsites. One that we've camped with is called Thousand Trails. They have campsites all over the states, and the campsite we've been to with Thousand Trails had pickleball courts, they had a pool, they had a camp store, so that might even be easier for you. And there are also if you go to hipcamp.com is kind of like a Airbnb for land. Because literally, like Hip Camp, it might just be you can park your camper van in our parking lot, in our driveway. So, however, there are also people who just own land and you can camp on the land. We've done Hip Camp. It's been a mixed experience. It's always been a great experience in terms of the campsites themselves, but sometimes because if the hosts live on site, that can, So it's like Airbnb. It's a mixed bag. However, if you can't get, let's say there's a place that you wanna go, it's a popular site, and you can't get a campsite at the campground, Hip Camp and Thousand Trails will always have availability. I've never wanted to go camping and not been able to find a site if I go through those 2 web locations. So, yeah, there's always a way to find campsite. My final tip in terms of summer plans, part 2, is to think about, if you this is a great time to think about how you might wanna start thinking about the end of summer. My child is actually transitioning. She is going to be going to a regular school in the fall, and a big change for her is going to be what time she gets up in the morning. And so I have already put into my calendar that starting on this date, we are going to start. So it's 2 weeks before school starts. I've already put in my calendar, we are going to start getting up earlier and earlier so that by the time school does start, it's something that's easy for her. I also have a list of things that we're going to be working on this summer, because although my child has been working on typing for a couple of years, she is not typing at the level that I would like her to be at this point, and I'm basing this on my own typing skills that I started acquiring in 7th grade, and so I just know that I was further along with my typing proficiency than she is. So, typing is one thing that we're gonna be working on this summer. We're also going to be working on math because she knows how to do a lot of things, but she doesn't always know when to do them. And I want her to have a level of mastery. Like, she was complaining about this the other day, and I said to her, "What's 2 plus 2?" And she said, "4." I said, "Okay, now, if you have x squared plus x squared, what's that?" And she didn't get it right immediately. And so I said to her, "You need to have the 2 plus 2 level of mastery with the x squared plus x squared problem." And so we're gonna be working on some math skills, just reinforcing those so that she's really prepared. And then the third thing we're working on is some writing skills, because we've been working on writing essays, but I would like her to have a higher level of proficiency with that. And so those are the 3 things that we're working on. And as I mentioned, 2 weeks before school starts, we're gonna start working on getting up earlier and earlier, and these are all things that I have put, you know, in my planner. If you've seen us talking before, we're huge fans of paper planners, and so these are things that I have written down in my planner. So, write those down. And the final thing I would say is, maybe you wanna have some sort of end of summer get together. Maybe you wanna host a pool party, a barbecue, or even, I've done this before, really fun, where we close off part of our street. I talk to the neighbors. We close off part of the street, and we just invite friends to bring their scooters and their bikes, and just the kids just bike around. The parents bring out lawn chairs. We sit, we hang out, people potluck it. Maybe there's food, maybe there's not food, but it's just a fun way to just kind of cap the summer off and say, that was a great summer. And just to think about it, and just to, okay, we're ready for school time. So, summer plans 2.0, there's still, not 2.0, summer plans part 2, there's still lots of things to think about and ways to enjoy the summer. So, here's some things, and thank you so much for joining me today. Natasha and I will see you together at our usual time next Thursday, 9:30 a.m. Pacific, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. And if you want to re-listen to this, you can always catch the audio only version of this live chat wherever you get your podcasts. Look for the Harness the Power of Planning podcast. Harness the Power of Planning podcast. This will be episode 57 when it goes up. Look tomorrow. It usually is when it takes about 24 hours for it to get up. Thank you so much for joining us, and dream wild, wild dreamers.